listening to this special exhibition that's dedicated and focused on the art of these two beautiful artists, Evie and Lydia. I'm going to talk about the collaboration of these beautiful forms, these beautiful colors, and the exhibition is called Soft Spaces. So we'll find out how these two artists came to work together. My name is Alina, Davey, and I work at Sotheby's Auction House, which is just across the road. I joined the auction world in 2004 and have seen a big change in the interest towards female artists. Contemporary art has changed dramatically. In 2004, the main and the most interesting category of collecting was the Impressionist art and Old Masters. Contemporary art and the Free Spare were just getting attention globally, and especially in London. So I think today, with the last week of important big auctions taking place across London in major auction houses, including Sotheby's and Christie's and Phillips, I think the interest, especially to female artists, is growing. In the last 3 years, we have seen over 70% growth in representation of female artists. And I think it's not just about female or gender representation. I actually think good art doesn't need to have a label, in my personal opinion. However, we know that to access and to be noticed in the art world, you need to have the strong character, which probably quite often is easier, and it's easier for a male participant to enter. And I think what's really also important today, when we talk about collaborations, how many collaborations in art do we all know and can think of very quickly? Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera as a couple artist, Max Ernst and Leonora Tanning, another artist couple. Apart from romantic collaborations, okay, Warhol and Basquiat, again, two male collaborations, another Rothko and with an architect, Johnson, they created Rothko Chapel, again, a male collaboration. Gorilla Girls, well, that was actually a work of a female incognito group which was formed to protest and fight against the discrimination of female artists. So again, that had a political aspect. And I can't really name any of the recent collaborations or movements where artists come together. If we look at the film, theatre and other industries, collaborations is the key, and this is the work that we can all access today, is the collaboration in those industries. And in art, I think we're here at the beginning of something very interesting. So how did you both meet and started creating together, and aesthetically, conceptually, how did you merge these ideas?
Well, really interestingly, we actually met in the girls' toilet, which is where all good stories start. And it was in our studio space in Bank, and we met and we said hi to each other. I invited Lydia to come into my studio, and she saw my work. I went down to her studio, saw her work, and we were like, there is definitely some kind of lead here that we can do. We can work together and have an exhibition. And it was really Lydia who has been the driving force in kind of encouraging me and getting this all together and working as a
there were just too many synergies to not collaborate together. And I think it's really important, like you said, Alina, that females do collaborate together because we're stronger together, and just your paintings and my sculptures just have a complete duality and work together so beautifully.
And I think it's what's really important here, it's the trust.
Yes,
the collaboration
complete
trust, because it's art and it's you're driven by passion and emotions. So can you talk a little bit more about the technological aspect and the form and why the exhibition is called Soft Spaces? Can you take us through the journey?
Yeah, Soft Spaces, I guess it's because Evie mentioned that she saw landscapes and the shadows that my sculptures made within themselves, and across like the walls of my studio created landscapes within themselves. And the way that Evie layers her photography on top of each other to create her paintings, and you just get enveloped into the softness of her paintings. So the spaces of my sculptures and the softness of Evie's work just created these soft landscapes to the point where after 5 or 6 goes, we landed on soft spaces and it just felt completely right.
I think also there's an element to sculpture which is so about space, you know, like a 3D object in itself makes you walk around it and like journey through it, and especially with Lydia's sculptures because they have all of these holes and kind of like meandering valleys and things that it really invites you to walk around it. And I thought it would be a really special thing to be able to have the sculptures and then the paintings behind that, and being able to have this like totally unified space where you see painting within sculpture and they are unified, they are one, and so that's why the space element was so important, I think.
It's very sensory.
Very sensory.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned you use technology to some
Yes.
aspect.
Yeah,
and
so
photography, so
very technology heavy in terms of the transition from physical to digital. So then when I found out about Evie's process where she creates photographs, layers them together in the computer to then transition that back out into the physical world, it was just another tick as to how our practices were just so aligned. So I sculpt in clay first, and then I scan it with a special sensor which warps and distorts the original clay sculpture, and then that gets transformed into a digital NFT artwork that then inspires a physical world sculpture again, so it creates its own ecosystem within the conversations of the physical and digital spaces of my work.
and well, you mentioned landscape. Well, what I can see is the human presence and the elements. So is the human present in the landscape? So how do you work with that emotional and physical presence of a human body?
Yeah, I think there are lots of different elements to my practice in terms of, like, as you said, the emotional element. And I think as an artist, and especially in the way that I've been working at the moment, I'm spending about 80% of my life in the studio, whereas before I was like working in hospitality and doing a lot of other jobs. And that means that you, as an artist, you are by yourself a lot of the time. It's a very solitary existence, and you sit with your feelings probably more than most people. So it's just you and the work and the instrument that you're using, and so inevitably you feel the sadnesses of life in a more profound way, and you feel, you know, you just sit with every single feeling far more than someone that might be working in an office, for example.
I'm distracted by the everyday,
Yeah.
and that feeds into what I hope to bring. I think what we both hope to bring is a meditative state when people look at our work, to feel calm, to feel that sense of softness, and to journey around the sculptures like Evie mentioned when they're in their hectic, anxiety-inducing day that this technological world and society is putting on us, and to take a break, take a pause, take a breath, and to then journey forward.
There's also, continuing from that, I think there's a really important thing to say about like how in this moment, in this contemporary age, we are so bombarded by images every single day. You know, there's Instagram, and then you come outside and there's adverts thrown at you and on buses and everything. So you're just, to tune out of that for a second is really hard. And like as artists, like we always are facing this this challenge of how do you make someone stick an image that you've made, you know, like how like when we're so used to just flick, how do you make someone take a concerted look at what you've done? And I think one of the ways that I have considered doing that is by layering and by creating kind of like a lot of like different images in one image, in the hope that like for me that kind of like calms the mind as much as it excites it.
And what comes first, the concept, the form, the
Yeah.
idea?
God, it's difficult to say what comes first, because I think that there are so many things that inspire you on like a day-to-day basis that you just, you know, when you have a lead, I have this lead of like combining drapery with faces and bodies so that they become one kind of landscape and flow in and out of each other. That's when I kind of started layering those things, and then the paintings and the colours and stuff, they take on their own life after that starts. What about you?
Yeah, mine's mine's very research based, which never used to be the case. And when I come to the clay bag, I don't know what is going to come out of it. But all of the research that I've done around ancient history and communication, the future, technology, spirituality, meditation, all of these topics then just come out emotionally through me, and I'm in this meditative state where I don't have a plan of the sculpture that's going to come out, and then all of a sudden it just appears in front of me, and it has been formed by the research that I've done about that specific topic just before I've created it. It's like it speaks through me and I don't have control.
Well, I think I'm hearing here a really free approach to creating art, because if you think about established artists, they're so constrained with the programming from exhibitions and commissions, and I completely understand collectors direct and they help the art market and the industry and the artists to continue working. But I think you are in this beautiful, beautiful stage when you are free with your ideas, when you can create the concept and you lead. And I think we shouldn't underestimate that in today's world, many artists have to find a gallery to be represented. And what you're doing today is your art, it's your project, and we're sitting here in a space that's curated by you, the artists. So what's different in the curatorial aspect of putting this exhibition together? Because you're the artist, you have a...
I think we just came into the space, looked at it when it was at a different transformation stage. I think it was the first time I came in, it was a fashion pop-up, and I was like, okay, we'll just have to move this here. Evie, you came in when it was another exhibition.
Yeah.
And I think again, going back to trust, we just came into the space on the day of installation, not really knowing how it was going to look, but knowing that our artwork goes so well together, and the space is a beautiful space, and that we would be able, by the end of the day, to have something that looked fantastic, and having no middleman or no outside, just me and Evie working together. And we haven't really disagreed on anything. We've had just conversations. I think this, you think that. Oh, okay, and we find the middle ground. It really is. We've been a really great team.
But it's been quite unusual as well, because I guess in a normal gallery kind of dynamic, you have the gallerist or the gallery kind of doing all of the admin in the back of house, and then you just have the artist making the work. And I think it's been an incredible amount of work to be doing the work, producing it, and then also having meetings pretty much every day about the invitations and everything to the vinyl. It's just the guest list, the
events, the sponsors.
Incredible learning process. I think.
We have curated and produced the show. Ourselves.
That's incredible. I think this is also the advantage of the world we're living today, because you can control, you can create, and you don't have to wait for that curator or a gallery to find you. And I think this is incredible. And I think with the social media, how do you communicate with social media? How much time do you need to spend in order to get noticed and include your work in that outreach?
So I find it quite controversial, and I get annoyed with social media because it's always trying to lure you into what's next on the algorithm and take you away from what is authentic to you. So whenever I do a post on social media, it's because I want to. And if it means it's been 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 months, or if it's every day, I'm less concerned with whether I hit the trigger button on the algorithm, because I've got a curated, valuable follow list, which doesn't mean that I have 45,000 followers. I have under 3,000, but I know every single person on my page is actively invested in my career, so I really enjoy communicating with them. And so I tap out of it to a certain extent. I do love Instagram. It's an incredible tool. I use it in the physical world, actually, when I'm going to events and talking to people. It's my portfolio that I show them, and because I take really delicate care of it to make it look lovely. That's my forward-facing thing to the public. But I'm not on TikTok, or I refuse to be.
Statistically, Instagram is the most effective tool in the art industry.
Yeah,
So
effectively it's kind of like your portfolio, what used to be your portfolio. So, I don't know, I felt, especially with this show, I've been very quiet on Instagram because I've really wanted that feeling of presenting something to the world that no one has seen before, and for my own kind of peace of mind, I didn't want to release anything that I wasn't completely ready about releasing, you know? It's just like to have people walk into an exhibition and have not seen it and just be kind of arrested by that moment of time, like that's really important to me.
But since we're talking
We've
about
lost that a lot.
technology as well, I can see in the NFT work.
Yes.
So please take us through the idea.
So like,
especially
of the NFT.
especially in the crisis on the NFT market at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes, well, just before I start, I'm part of a wonderful group called London Women Leading Web3, which is an organisation to raise awareness about the gender imbalance within Web3. Web3 is a new economy that is growing, and again, women and marginalised groups are at the bottom tier. Classic. So that's what I just wanted to say first. But yes, so part of my process before I found out about NFTs was scanning my clay sculptures, translating them digitally, and then using the digital as inspiration for a physical. But then I learned about NFTs, where a digital artwork is an artwork within its own right. So the part of my process then became another artwork. And as my sculptures are very natural, they're made in plaster, bronze and marble, entering into this colourful, new, exciting digital space, I thought, why don't I collaborate with other artists, primarily painters. I have collaborated with poets as well, and me and Evie are also poets. And I wrapped Evie's painting, Mother Cocoon, around the digital sculpture to create a co-authored NFT artwork, which is titled Infinity and Beyond, and that's the one I'm using over there.
Which platform do you use?
Super Rare, which is one of the top tier ones, so that's lovely. So yeah, my digital works are on Super Rare.
Very interesting. So you mentioned poetry.
Yeah.
So beautiful, in its own right. And what was the first inspiration? Is the words?
Weirdly, we weren't really aware that either of us were going to write poems as the description. I think it's really difficult to put words with paintings because naturally visual art is an expression of something when words fall short of being able to say it, right? So like it's difficult to put words to it, but I think I write a lot, and as I'm painting, and like everything feeds into each other. So I thought rather than writing direct descriptions that can sometimes feel a little bit stale next to a visual artwork, to write poetry just maybe is just a bit of a seed of thought that goes in and creates a bit more of a way. We love each other's poetry, and we've naturally kind of had meetings and discussed things, and both of our work is what we visualize and what we say is so intertwined. So it's very important what is written in those booklets. So I hope everyone has a chance to read them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very inspired actually to ask you more questions about the poetry as well. And so when we talk about meditation, spirituality, and we all live in this really hectic pace of life, especially in London. And so how do you manage to find the time and pause and to give yourself that time free of guilt to create and keep creating?
I think it's what Evie said earlier though about being in the studio and creating such a solidary existence. I'm the same as Evie, like preparing for the show. I've just been in the studio all the time since November, and then also doing another side job as well to fund the show. So it's been work, and not much socialising. But within that, like Evie said earlier, you just get so deep into your core. And our studio's being based in Bank as well, on the weekend, there is nobody around. But you really do have to check yourself as an individual to not get like FOMO. You're just like, what do I want to do? And I believe everybody should ask this question to themselves, whether it's creating art or not. What do I want to do? And then the answer will sometimes come up. And quite a few years ago, the answer would always be, I don't know. But you just have to get used to listening into that inner voice that will tell you what you want, and it might not be popular opinion. Like, I want to stay in my studio all weekend and not go out and go to bed at 9:30. And like, that's not popular opinion for people in my age bracket. But it means that I get to be here and create my work.
Yeah.
And hopefully get to the stage where I want to be.
Yeah, in terms of like the meditative side of things, I think COVID really is what slowed me down. And pre-COVID, a couple of years ago, I was making a lot of abstract work that was on the human form, and it was very quick. I'd create a painting in a day, maybe even less than a day. And then during COVID, I think I really allowed myself to go back to the fundamentals of painting and look at like really old master methods of building up grounds and different layers of painting, and then eventually now into varnishing. And I think it's all, it slowed me down a lot, and I've given myself the time to take time with the paintings, and it gives me a real sense of, that's soothing in itself, it's soft in itself, and like that almost plays into the aesthetic, and the technique is almost reflective of that, you know, the total slowing down and like meditative process. And weirdly, when I'm in the studio, I can go about like 7 or 8 hours without thinking about food, which is so unlike me. And yeah, so truly it is a time when I'm out of my mind and just solely focused on the work.
Flow state, that's what I call it.
Which hopefully comes across, which is kind of what we wanted. Like this, Lydia's sculptures definitely make me feel calm when I look at them, and I hope there's a sense of soft, calm, sultry.
And it is very clear, your artwork is so poetic and so soft, and the colours, can you describe how you find the colour, and also and the colour for you as well, white and very gentle? But would you also call your art feminist?
Oh,
I know, it's
Yeah, I'll definitely speak about this. So that was something I shied away from a long time, but I now think it's something that is like quality. Yeah, exactly. A quality that we have to revel in, you know, and colour for me is so important. Like, it's so evocative. It's like, one of the things I love about visual art so much is that you can see, especially oil painting, you can see like a really deep, sultry kind of burgundy that you just want to like sink into, but then you also can have like a really bright yellow, you know, that should taste of lemon. Like, it's so powerful what these things can do, and I think that's why it's so important to surround yourself with so much art. And it doesn't have to be art that makes you happy or makes you feel good, it just has to be art that makes you feel something, because it can, you know, like just a colour field can make you feel sad or bring back a memory or make you smell a fleeting scent. Like, it's just so powerful, and I think colours come to me from a really deep place. This painting was all about breathing and lightness and health and memory in itself, and so yellow was just such a beautiful colour to go with for that, because it encapsulates all those feelings of lightness and airiness and sun, life, spring, you know, vitality. So yeah, but I could speak about colour for hours, so I'll shut up.
And I'm the complete opposite. I guess the reason that I go for whites and bronzes and marbles is because I really want that deep connection to the earth and to our origins and our roots and like archaeology and ancient past and historical context. Like, marble, bronze and plaster have been used well. Similarly to oil paint, they go back ancient times, beginning of human history potentially, of creating art. So the fact that we're both using them in the contemporary era and they've survived this long, I just feel within its own right of the materials, it connects you to every human being that's ever walked the earth, which I know is quite a large thing to say. But that's why I keep my colours very muted and very calming and very meditative, and then why I wanted to add colour into the digital space because of all the points that Evie made. So.
And I think, especially with your sculptures, the white just makes you concentrate on the form in such a profound way that it is nothing distracting there, you know? It's just you and the 3D form, and like that is so important for the viewer in that sense.
So we talked about what inspires you. Who inspires you? Anyone in the art, in the history of art?
Oh yeah, 100%. I spent over the last 6 months or so, I spent quite a lot of time at the National Gallery, which is now like my new favourite place. Rubens, especially, I think, for me, because of the excitement that he had over doing these like falling, kind of like really luxurious scenes of drapery. And it was like, I don't know, there's something about drapery in particular at that stage in painting that was, it almost felt like for abstract artists or artists that like had an inclination that liked the abstract. It was almost this liberation that you were painting something representational, but because of the twists and the folds and these like explosions of colour and light that drapery naturally has, it's almost akin to abstraction. So the drapery I've just been absolutely obsessed with, and I've drawn that a lot. You can have a look at my sketchbook, which is right at the front, and I've done a lot of drawings of all the drapery at the National Gallery. But yeah, definitely Rubens for me, and loads of contemporary painters like Caroline Walker, Louise Joao Vanelli. Yeah, the list goes on. But I try and tune it out a lot on a day-to-day basis, because we all absorb a lot of that stuff, and you end up kind of like, is that line of like, am I overlapping their practice? I've just got to stay on your own path, you know. Yeah.
And for me, forgive me if I say his name wrong, Isumu Nugachi. He's an American-Japanese sculptor that is no longer, he's not with us anymore, but he had a fabulous show at Barbican, I think last year now, and I just resonated so much with his journey through finding his voice in his art practice. He used to be a very figurative artist, as the eye, and then he merged over into abstraction using metals, plasters, woods, and has done children's playgrounds, and there's a project that I'm hoping that will come off soon where I can design a child's playground using abstract sculpture. And then contemporary artists recently absolutely adore Benjamin Spires. Again, his work is fantastic, he's a painter, but he also has a similarity of very figurative but also very abstract and cubic, and he puts everything, all of these different eras of art world on the canvas. And yeah, they're both incredible artists, and they just inspire me to make me realise that the skill sets that I have within figurative and abstraction, I can combine and create art in whatever way I choose, including NFTs.
And yeah, that's a really beautiful thing about the way that we're working with ancient materials, is that yes, we have that link to history, and it feels like with oil painting, every mark that you make on the canvas kind of references the whole of art history because of the weight that it has, and the same with clay and sculpture. But then also to be doing quite contemporary things with that, it feels really fresh and hopefully really exciting for everyone else to see, especially in collaboration.
Well, your artwork need to find a home.
Hopefully.
So how do you communicate with the art market? Creating work and then living with this work, they need to find another admirer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's your experience?
I think that's, I don't know if I can speak for both of us, but that's my current challenge. Putting on this show itself and being an artist, even without producing a show, just being an artist in your own studio without any support of a gallery or art dealers or collectors, you are wearing so many different hats all of the time, and then producing a show. The reason we have produced a show is to be noticed. We're not going to get noticed if we're in our studios creating work. What is the point of us creating this wonderful work if nobody gets to see it? And also I'm of the mindset of like, why wait? Let's do it now. Let's do it together.
I'm much more like, I'll just paint in my studio. And someone will find me eventually. Like, my overriding feeling is that I do it for myself, but obviously it's a life career and it's a life choice, so have to make a business. Have to be a bit more business-minded out of it. But Lydia's gradually shifting me over to the other side.
Yeah, so I guess it is out, like that's where Instagram and social media comes in, and going to events in real life. So you're going to have the tandem of showing up, being invited, getting through those gates that are closed, and then I've been very fortunate in the last year to have ended up in some amazing rooms where the gates would normally be closed, and then you just have to work the room. You have to go in, you have to get your skill set on of right, okay, let's go, and just talk to people. Find a delicate way to approach people.
Absolutely.
Luckily with art, if you're standing by a painting, you can go, oh, isn't that lovely? And then someone will be like, oh, yes. And then I'm Lydia Smith, I'm an artist. Blah, blah, blah. And then that'll happen.
What's next?
What is next?
In this next year project.
So next weekend, I'm collaborating with L'Oreal, which is pretty cool.
Woo!
So lots of and then naturally, obviously, my work is very sensory, and I love collaborating with perfume brands. I've collaborated with Dior and Guerlain, and that plays into my work really nicely because
They're beautiful.
the sensory sensory elements of that, which I love. So yes, I'm teaching a few workshops and doing some personalisation of perfume for them. And then I'm just going to be continuing with all of the leads in this show and making, just continuing with the work and hopefully upcoming shows as well and more collaborations, because I feel like this has filled me with so much confidence and just joy to be able to share it with someone else rather than it being kind of a solitary artist experience.
And I think you will inject a lot of creativity into those brands because these are commercial entities, and I think what you would bring.
Oh, thank you.
And I think, it's so important for artists to collaborate with brands and people outside of the art world, because we have two different types of brain and two different ways of thinking, and if you can listen to each other and utilise your skill sets, magic can happen, especially finance with art, and it's I've seen some, a friend is now a photographer at a law firm that's fantastic, and they need some help with their social media and all these different things. So I think again the word collaboration is just fantastic, and not keeping it within your bubbles. The bubbles exist for a reason, but let's cross-contaminate.
Well, with these really inspirational ideas and your plans, I would like to ask questions.
Yes. Any question?
What does NFT stand for?
Okay. So NFT stands for non-fungible token, which is also very confusing, but wonderful Pelham in the audience here tonight gave me a fabulous definition when I was learning it about myself. So correct me if I get this wrong, Pelham, is a non-fungible token is when you give something to someone and you have to get the exact same thing back. So a fungible token is a £5 note. So I can give you a £5 note and you can give me any £5 note back. So a non-fungible is it has to be the same thing. So it's all stored on this amazing system called the blockchain, which is an open network where everyone can see what's going on. So if you buy my sculpture, you own that. And no one else can copy it, it's non-fungible, you are the owner of it, it's logged, clear, and I could speak about this for ages, like you can speak about colour. But that's why it's so important for artists as well, because it acts as a certificate of authenticity. So it shows, and also part of this amazing package of transparency, and instead of you getting a piece of paper which you could lose, or authentication. No. It's stored digitally, and every single time it's resold on the secondary, third, fourth market, because it's attached to this technology, there's no chasing. The artist gets 10% of the resale value. Okay. So your artwork is continuously paying you dividends throughout your career. So as an early career artist, you're selling for cheaper. So actually, as you get more established and your work sells for more, your work that you made at the beginning of your career is still benefiting you and the collector. So that's NFTs.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Any more questions?
I've got one, yeah. So I work in art education. What really stuck out to me is when you said you create. I mean, I know me and Evie has had this conversation before, but this kind of you create and don't know where it's going. And I know a massive barrier with students making work is this sort of real massive fear of failing.
Yeah.
So when you're creating a sculpture and you don't know where it's going, kind of how have you prepared yourself for that quite inevitable disappointment many a time? And same with the painting. How do you prepare yourself for that?
I guess you just get used to it over time, and every single sculpture, even to this day, and I've been doing sculpture for just over 10 years, there is a stage where I hate it. Every single one. And I'm like, is this going to turn into anything? I'm not sure. And then the only answer is to get back into the studio and keep working on it. And, well, I do. And then giving up on something.
Yeah, giving up on something is equally as vital, really, because this painting, Heaven and Reverb, was born out of a failure, really, and it was a big painting, a big 2-piece painting that was going to be in the show, and I was working on it for about 2 weeks. Nothing was happening. I hated it. You know, tears, blah, blah, blah. And I said to Lydia, I really want to drop this and just move on to something else. And she was like, no, get back in. This happens to me all the time. Just get back in. And I was like, I know in my heart that I'm not going to be able to rescue this. It's muddy and it's horrible. Anyway, I was like, I'm starting something new and it needs to be a breath of fresh air. And then I started working on this and it was a breath of fresh air. And it quite literally, every movement, every gesture of it just felt like a breath. And so I think as much as you can kind of get over the feeling that you hate something and then like rework it, there's also a time when you just got to be like, nah, that's not working, move on to the next, accept that you've wasted a lot of materials and a lot of your time and don't waste any more, you know, like start something new.
And I think it is different between different mediums. Like, I can rescue a sculpture at any point in the process because transitioning into different materials, there's always a fix. I think even Internal Universe, which is this one just over here, it was cracking and drying a lot in the clay because it was taking quite a long time, and you just spray it down again, fill the cracks in the clay, and then keep going. It was very irritating, but I fixed it. And with a painting, if it gets muddy, it's hard.
You can paint over it, but especially with oil painting, you have long drying times, and you know, there's a very specific rule of fat over lean, and you have to abide by it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something that cracks again. So it's like, again, with the ancient materials, you can't. It's chemistry, and you can't defy that. You know,
Your dialogue to the work.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
How complex was it curating the sculptures with the art?
Quite easy.
Yeah, I'd say we got into the space and we knew that we knew how we were going to set things out in terms of the sculptures in the centre, obviously the paintings on the wall, and then we wanted something bright in the window to kind of draw people in, and then utilising the space that we had, kind of figured out the rest. But there are little conversations between things that are quite interesting. I mean, this sculpture, if we didn't have the chairs here and just earlier it was over there, and if you look at it from a certain angle, maybe when we move the chairs we'll move it back there, but when you look at it from a certain angle, the really lovely plane that kind of curves around from the top to the diagonally fell in line with this really nicely, so you kind of saw that behind it. And so little conversations like that in terms of like the communication of form was really important to us.
And I think the reason I said so easy is because I just feel like our work just synergizes so easily. And so it was just like, okay, this goes here, this goes there. Do you agree? I agree. Yes.
And realistically, we only have a day to set things up and, you know, patch up the walls and do everything else that is necessary to put on the show. So I think Lydia was setting 20-minute alarms on her phone to be like, if a decision isn't made by this point, we're moving on. And like, honestly, it wouldn't be up if she hadn't done that. Because I'd be taking hours on everything. She makes things happen.
I love the connection between the art and the poetry. Is that a process that is an existing piece of poetry that you then fit in, or is that something that you actually come up with as you're working on it, after you've worked on it?
Mine come after the sculptures. And I never thought I'd be writing this much poetry. The first poem I wrote actually was when I was transitioning. I used to work in the film industry and I still do freelance. But I was transitioning and I was working for another artist at the time, Nick Hornby, fabulous sculptor. And the first poem I wrote was about a piece of halloumi falling out of my sandwich and I couldn't get it back. Because I just was in this creative slump of like, I'm transitioning from figurative to abstract. I'm in this job which I love, but it's different from everything that I've known. Why not just try poetry? And then when the piece of cheese fell out of my sandwich, I thought, let's write about it. And then the next poem was Be More Like a Horse, which was when I was on an art residency. And that got a lot of traction and attention, and it really came out. And then I thought, okay, well, let's see if any other poems materialise whilst I'm creating the work. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Like Inside the Horizon doesn't have a poem, neither does Leftovers Always Taste Better the Next Day. So some have poems and some don't.
But in a way, the titles are almost poetry in itself, you know? Yeah.
And do you have music? Do you follow a particular...
No, so I'm quite strange. I'm dyslexic, so I can't remember things very easily. So I just listen to playlists depending on what mood I need to be in. So if I'm in a calm mood, I'll put my instrumental cafe playlist on. If I need a little bit of motivation but I'm not feeling too hard for, it's funky beats and vibes. And if it's I really need to get this done, it's techno workout playlist. So I use music as a tool to increase my energy or get the energy that I need for the specific task.
I'm thinking that the colour and music play such an important role in a conceptual idea of Kandinsky. So when you love colour,
Definitely.
to that extent that you just described, that this somehow is linked to...
It's definitely linked, yeah. I'm quite strict about what I listen to in the studio because I feel like if I'm listening to anything too upbeat, it really changes the pace of my painting, and if I want it to be slow and controlled, then that's not good. But again, like I've been working maybe 10 hours in the studio, sometimes 12 a day, so there's only so much music you can listen to, and like so podcasts are totally fine when I'm working. I love that, just a bit of background noise, not completely listening to it or in tune with it, just having a bit of something there rather than it just being too intense is perfect.
Actually, you just
Classical music I love as well, and a bit of rap. Why not?
I just wanted to add, when I'm sculpting in clay in this flow state, I can't listen to anything. I just have to, and then it's like time disappears, sound disappears. So if anything, I can't be distracted. So I'm quite a lot of total silence sometimes. And then when I'm in the studio and it's a different stage, like moulding and casting or casting out in plaster, I need a little bit of motivation to get through it because it's not the creative part of the job. That's when the high beats things come on, and then I have to turn them off on my lunch break, so it's like silence. So yeah, music really does play a big part, but to do with the creation process.
Yeah. I also think it's important to have the space and the silence to be able to create your work. Like I was working in a studio about a year ago, and it was a completely collaborative space, so there was no closed doors. I was working with like a music producer, and my work was so different, and it was very confused because I just had so many different energies coming into the room all the time. And I realise now the value of just having the time and the space, privacy, and what that does to the work, how conducive that is to like my productivity. But everyone needs something different, which is why it's so important to find the right kind of space and learn from the studios that you've been in before what works for you.
Yeah, I shared a studio with 2 other artists before, and it didn't work for me. Every time I walked into the space, even though we'd set it up in a way that it could be collaborative, because we were all sculptors, every time I saw their work, I couldn't get into my work, and it took me a long time to figure that out. I think I was in that studio for 7 months, and I just wasn't making anything, or it was very slow, and I just thought, it's their work. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it was just clouding my creativity.
I have a question about the extent of how you would consider technology for your processes moving forward. Would you consider, for example, a partnership for augmented reality with a company like Samsung or Apple or Microsoft? Have you approached any of those people, and what do you think of that?
So my sculptures that are NFTs are actually metaverse compatible, so they can go into the metaverse and be displayed in public sculptures, and that's one of the aims that I hope to have and sell to those types of collectors, so that when you're walking around the metaverse at an office building or a concert or whatever is going on in the metaverse, there's a public sculpture by Lydia Smith, and then that's linked to my website, and then it takes you here, and it's all this other like branding and marketing. So I have actually got an idea which I want to partner with people with, and I'm not going to share it because I think it's a big thing. So yeah, I've definitely thought about augmented reality a lot, and I think it could change the face of public sculpture, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Making spaces alive.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not adverse to anything really. I think one of the most amazing things about David Hockney, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, is that like an artist, how old is David Hockney? I don't know. 90? An artist in his 90s who has had a lifetime of working in painting, oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas, then adopts the iPad and incorporates that into his practice and creates this, incredible exhibitions of trees and nature, but using technology. And I think artists that are really averse to it and are completely ignoring it are the ones that are suffering because they're not. Each to their own, but I think it's incorporating the new technologies is only feeding your work more. It can't take anything away. It can just add to it.
Technology helps us.
Exactly, and
if
we don't think that like Michelangelo or the Renaissance painters would have used photography, then we're kidding ourselves. Like obviously they would have if they could have.
And we have actually used AI
Yeah.
in helping write emails.
Yeah.
And
Emails.
helping write we actually broke AI the other day because our guest list was so long for Tuesday night.
Couldn't put it in
alphabetical order.
AI failed.
AI failed us. So there are so many ways for artists to use these technologies, not only to create art, but also to help us. Like they've worded super important emails for me as well. Like you honestly, it's a gift. Where I've just typed in a polite and professional email about ABCD, it spits one out at you within 3 seconds, and then I then go ahead and edit it and then send it out. So I was able to send 4 important emails to, can't remember who to, but within 15 minutes, and that would normally take me 1 hour to do one.
It's incredible, yeah.
So it really is incredible.
But then 5 minutes later we're back to our clip and our action materials and our oil paint. So like there's a complete kind of floating in between.
Well, I would like to thank everyone, and we can continue the conversation. And thank you for participating and being part of this beautiful discussion, seeing the works, and being inspired.
Thank you so much.
Of this evening, Amelie, which is a skincare brand. So all of the people that RSVP, your names will put to a draw, which we'll get to later this evening. So we'll draw the names, and there'll be 15 winners of the Amelie goodie bag this evening, and we'll come up to you with that later. But please do have a drink and mingle.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Alina for your Right.